Hello and welcome to another video on my C# Basics tutorial series. Now, in this video, as always, please go ahead and follow me on GitHub, visit my website, and if you have any questions, you can email as well. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about the basic knowledge about exceptions and debugging. Now, this is something which you have to do a lot. Every time I work on a project, I am constantly, not out of necessity, but because I have to, like right now I'm working on a project for where we're building like a very simple file management software. Again, of course, I'm also building a demo project based on that work, and I'll be putting the code in my GitHub, and obviously I'll be making videos about that as well. So every now and then something doesn't work. For example, one thing that happened was I was trying to get some images uploaded. Okay, so I upload the image, and then it worked fine, and then the image was getting uploaded to the Azure blob storage. So far so good. But then another day I was trying out something new. So what I wanted to do, what I was trying to do was I was trying to use a AI image generator like Adobe Firefly. Okay, and I was trying to create images from that. Okay, and then I thought it might be nice for me to kind of rename the file. But what I did was, instead of creating my own file names, I thought I'll do a mix and match of the file name that was already in the file and then link it up with a GUID or something. So that way, I have the original username which the user gave to the image, and I also have a unique image as well. So I did it. Okay, and I got these images from Adobe Firefly, and then I went ahead and got the images uploaded, and I checked it on the cloud. See, the images are getting uploaded very just fine. But then I obviously once the images are uploaded, I built a simple web app that will take these images from the blob container, and then the images will show in a slideshow or something. I don't have the demo right now, but I will be showing that in a future tutorial series. Like obviously I'll be making videos about Azure and blob storage and how to build a gallery and everything like that. But although the images were on the cloud, the images weren't getting displayed on the website. And the worst part is, I had tested this feature the other day with other images, and they were working. And you know what the problem was? The issue was, for some bizarre reason, in that day's development, I decided to keep the file names provided by the user. That was the code change I did. And the problem is, when you show an image, you have to use the image tag, and you have to mention the src tag, which is the source tag. But if the image name has spaces, the image will not work. I forgot that very simple thing. It's like an idiot moment for me, and I should have realized that would happen already. So I went back to the code, and I went back to the previous code where instead of using any kind of username, in fact one of the file name guidelines, in fact there are some golden rules on what you should and should not do when you're uploading files or receiving files from the user, is you can't assume that the image will be correct. You have to take control, especially with file names and file types and file sizes. And one of those rules is that file name has to be generated by you. You cannot assume that the file names given by the user will be correct. It makes no practical sense to allow that feature in the first place. So to find this issue, I had to sit and debug. I'm telling this whole story because that's how important debugging is. Every time you write a code, not everything always goes just fine. And the more you become a developer, the more complex projects you work on, and the more are the possibilities that, sure, syntax errors, those kind of errors, the Visual Studio will catch it for you. But I'm talking about logical errors. For those things, you have to know about debugging. And obviously, you never know what is going to happen. So you have to catch exceptions and stuff like that. So that is what this video is about. But a little bit of story there. It is the most important thing a developer will do: debugging. In fact, one of the many reasons why I don't enjoy front-end development, like I do some front-end videos also on the channel. Every now and then I'll put a video about CSS or React.js or JavaScript, but I don't enjoy front end. In fact, even JavaScript, when I work on JavaScript projects and things like that, debugging is a little tricky, especially with front end. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is a little tricky, and I think that is one reason why I don't really enjoy front end development. But that's a story for another day. So let's get to it. Let's show some basic stuff of debugging. Now I am going to go ahead and use the previous project here. Okay, so let's use the same thing. So let's say I'm going to make a small mistake here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of I plus 1, I am going to make it I plus plus. Okay, just to show what I am talking about. So I am going to say I plus plus. Okay, now let's see what happens to the output. Okay, look at this. It says 0 to 4. So there's no error. This is the thing I'm talking about. A lot of times you don't have any error or build errors or coding errors. That part is easy. So right now you can see here that the error list is 0. There are no errors, not even warnings. It's a clean code. But if I look at the output, I notice that I'm supposed to get 5 displays. It does say 5 messages displayed. So the I value, the count value is fine. But if I look at the output, I'm only getting 3, not 5. And if I look at this, it says 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So what is happening here? So the odd number outputs are not showing up on the screen. They are being skipped. They're being hopped over by exactly 1 value. So what I could do is, now obviously I know what I did wrong, but let's imagine that I don't know what has gone wrong. So what I would do is I would start putting breakpoints. Now putting breakpoints in the right place is in itself an art. You should be able, whenever I get a new project, like when I'm brought in by a client to a project, the first thing I do, even if the client is not paying for it, I don't care. I need to learn for my own sake. So I'll go ahead, sit on the project, just randomly start putting breakpoints all over the project till I understand what is going on and where. And I start with hundreds of breakpoints and eventually whittle it down to the key breakpoints. And once I know what is happening where, I'm set to go. So that's how important breakpoints are, to me at least. So here, let's go ahead and put a breakpoint. Normally, when I'm doing things, I put a breakpoint in the beginning of the function and at the last line of the function. Now that's not like a rule or something, but it helps you in in the initial stage of understanding your project, initial stage of debugging your project. It's like, imagine a function is like a house. So you put a security guard at the entrance of the house and you put the security guard at the exit of the house. So that way you know when the code is executing inside the function and you know when it is exiting. Now why is this useful? Like especially when you have a crashes and programs not infinite loops and stuff like that, the beginning and ending is usually a good place to start investigating, and then you can dig deeper. So that is something that I do. So let's give it a try. So and also I'm only going to call the function once. I don't want to call the 100 thing because then the loop will go forever. So now if I do this, I see here the breakpoint is highlighted. So that's really nice, isn't it? So another thing I want to know is, see, whenever you're using this, there is something called, in the bottom of the screen, you have these boxes called locals and you have something called watches. I don't use watches all that much. I mean, if you want to, you can use it. Like you can type, let's say I want to add this variable to the watch. So you can keep an eye, watch those variables. But I don't use it that much. A lot of times I just look at the locals, or I simply take my cursor and put the cursor on top of this one. Now remember, you can only check the variables before the breakpoint. Like if you check the message here, it may have a value, it may not have a value. For example, I is not yet created, so you won't get anything there. But if you put your cursor on top of count, you do get a value. So there you go. That's one way of doing it. And depending on the type of data you're working with, you will get additional information. Like count, you don't get any additional information, just a number. But message, you do get additional information like view and a visualizer and stuff like that. So it's up to you. You can investigate that also. And another thing is, if I want to, I can go here and edit the value. So I can change this I am Batman to Catman, and that's fine, right? So even though here it says Batman, I can go directly and edit. Very useful when you're debugging to find out specific values that are crashing out. Right then, so let's, now here at the top, these are again golden buttons. I love these buttons. So this one is digging deeper. It's called stepping into. Very useful when you have hundreds of functions that you want to debug. Right now I don't have it, so I'm going to let it be. And then the one I normally use is step over. That seems to tell me, like, usually you use a combination of stepping over and stepping into. So if, let's say you have 10 functions and you're calling all of them, as in the beginning, you don't know which function is actually crashing. So you start with step over, and then when you find out that something is crashing, then you start stepping into the function that is causing the crash, and just keep looping over it until you find the source of the trouble. We will do all these things when we build our .NET projects. I'm purposefully not going into that right now, because right now we'll focus on a single layer of debugging. So right then, so there you go. I know the message is now, I can edit the values. I've done that as well. So I'm gonna go on and say F10. Okay, I is 1. Okay, now I is supposed to happen 5 times. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I was expecting the loop to happen 5 times. Okay, because that's what I've written here. I've said I equals 0, I less than count. Now count is 5. So I was hoping the loop to happen 5 times, but I just noticed the loop only happened 3 times. So that means the problem is somewhere here. Something is happening to I, and the value of I is jumping. So what I will do is I will put another breakpoint here. So digging deeper, as I mentioned, once you have isolated, now I know this is no longer the problem. Line number 15 is no longer the issue. So I can remove that breakpoint. Now I'm going to keep the breakpoint in the beginning of the function, because that is where I'm starting. I still haven't isolated the problem yet, but I do feel something is happening inside the for loop. So I'm going to put a breakpoint, at the beginning of the for loop, and I'll put another breakpoint at the end of the for loop. Now it does seem like it's a lot of breakpoints. Now, as I mentioned, it is your own way of looking at things. Now I like to go slow when I'm debugging. I would rather be slow and be accurate than be in a rush and mess things up. Yes, so let's go ahead and click on continue. So that's part. Let's start again. And here, okay, I have I'm gonna step into, okay, I is 0. I can see here also it's 0. Good. And now remember, until it comes back here, I should remain 1. Okay, I is still 1. So far so good. And I is here. Good. 2. Okay. I come here. I is 3. Look at that. Look at that. It's already become 3, although there have only been 2 loops. And now I has become 4 already. And when I go here, I has become 5 already. That means somewhere here, the value of I is being manipulated, and that is the source of the problem. So what I'll do is I'll stop running the code. I'll come here, and I notice here that I put a code called I++. Now what I really wanted was I plus 1. So I'm going to go and say I plus 1. Now I know the issue is fixed, because what I can do is I'm going to go to debug here, and I'm going to either I can delete the breakpoints or disable it. But I don't want to delete the breakpoint, because I put some effort into putting those breakpoints. So I'm just going to disable it for now. I'm going to run to see if the output is better. The output is back in action. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me uncomment this also. And then I'm going to run this, and I see that there we go. Now this is also something that we do when you're trying to fix an issue. First check it for small values, and once it is working for smaller values, then check it for the larger values. Another good way to develop code and so on. So there you go. That is how you go ahead and debug a program. Now there is another thing which you have to know, and that is going to be exceptions. Now there are general exceptions, there are specific exceptions. We'll see specific exceptions when we start working on project which is coming up in the future videos. But here let's try to do something very simple. So what I'm going to do is I am going to say here, all right, so let's create a string. I'm going to say var some string is equal to I. We already have a string, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var some character. And you know what, I know the string is I am Batman. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. It has 11 positions. So what if I try to take the 12th position? So I'm going to say message, and I'm going to say 15. Okay, so I want the 15th position. So we start from 0. So that's actually the character at location 16. So I'm trying to get something which doesn't exist. So when I try to run this project, it will crash. See, there you go. It says exception unhandled. So something unexpected is happening here. So that is when we want this. So I'm going to copy the exception here. Okay, I'm just going to put it here. Okay, but first I'm going to write a general exception. So here I'm going to say try, okay, try, and then here I'm going to say catch exception E, and then I'm going to put whatever is the problematic, potentially problematic, something that can create an issue. And here I'm going to say console.writeLine E.message. Oh, I don't know why that is still there. Okay, let me just rebuild it. I think it should go away. Oh, I forgot to stop the debugging. Okay, right then. So now what will happen is, so here last time what happened when we got the exception, so normally when you get exceptions which are unhandled, your program will crash. So the whole point of handling exceptions is to stop your program from crashing unexpectedly. So a lot of times you can predict what can go wrong in software development, but some things are beyond your control. Like for example, let's say you're trying to save a file to the disk, but the disk has run out of space. It can happen, right? I mean, of course, you can already put safeguards to say that, okay, fine, now if the disk storage is becoming full, then you can block files from being uploaded, or you can give a message already even before the upload process starts. There are a lot of things that you can do, but still, it is still our duty as a developer to make sure that you catch whatever things that can go wrong unexpectedly and give at least an error message. The whole point of this, exception catching is to inform the user or log the error to the system administrator or DevOps people, and of course yourself, the developer, that something has gone wrong. So what we do is, so here we have a feeling. Now, if this message was, instead of I am Batman, if this message was I am Batman, I am Dark Knight, I have a Batmobile, if this is a long sentence, the exception will never happen. So let's give it a try. So here what I'm going to say, I am the knight, I am vengeance, right? So if I use a longer sentence, then I will never get any error. So I'll put a breakpoint here. The exception will never be triggered because the sentence is already long, so the exception will never get triggered. But if the sentence becomes shorter, the character doesn't exist. And look at that, the exception was triggered. The exception is index out of range exception. So we are trying to access something which is beyond the range, which doesn't exist. So, but now the good thing is, because I put this inside a try catch block, the program will not crash. It will continue as if nothing has gone wrong. You can see here the output is still working. If the try catch exception code wasn't there, the program would have crashed, and that's not good for user experience. So that is, and also somewhere here there will be a message that says index was outside the bounds of the array, and I'm sure the same message is here. The second time we called, same message must have come. Index was outside the bounds of the array, and index, why is it not coming the second time? That's crazy, isn't it? I'm only calling it, oh, the second sentence actually is longer. So there you go, that's what I'm talking about. So the first time we're calling it, we are sending a shorter sentence, so the error message is displayed. The second time we are already supplying a longer string, so there was no need for this exception to be raised, and the execution continued without any problems. So there you go, that is really the main thing here when you're talking about debugging. Catch exceptions, you already saw we already have a general exception. Like if I don't know what the exception is, like a lot of times you don't know what the exception is, so I'm doing exception E. But if I want to, I can do something like exception index the index out of range exception, and here I can say using got a array problem. So now this will never be triggered, only this will get triggered. So here we go. See, this will not be triggered because we have a specific exception to catch a specific problem. Now, where is this useful? So once again, this is useful, like I'm going to take that blob storage example again. So when we are trying to upload files, so many things can go wrong. You could have a access issue, so you will have an access exception. You could have a network issue, so you would have a network exception. You could have a file size issue, like if your blob storage can only handle 200 MB worth of files and you're trying to push a file which is 250 MB, then again that's an exception. So what we do is in development, as many whatever you think is the list of things that go wrong, and if there is an exception, most of the time, especially when you're using .NET and Azure libraries, almost everything that can go wrong, there will be an exception object and class for it. So you can just make a full list of it and add the response to your API response. And what that is important because that gives a feedback to the user, or at least, obviously you'll be doing logging and stuff like that. So there also, it's very useful to find out, okay, what is going wrong. It helps in diagnosing production type issues so that you can fix it later. So there you go. So that's really what we are going to do here with exceptions and debugging. Very, very useful. I mean, for me, I think this is really the most important thing a developer can do, because people talk about development means bug fixing. You're either developing new features or you're trying to fix bugs which developed as part of your feature development. And either of these cases, you are doing debugging constantly. And what else is there in software development anyway? So there you go, folks. That is what this is all about. So exceptions and debugging, breakpoints, values, watches, specific exceptions, generic exceptions, ultimately making sure that your program does what it is supposed to do. And when something unexpected happens, your code is robust enough to catch it and then log it, or at least give a response to the user so they know what went wrong. So that is all there is to it in this one. And thank you.